Hello, everyone, and welcome to our first and maybe only bonus Q&A session for Exploring Divine Resonance. I want to welcome everyone who's tuning in on the live simulcast or watching the replay of that on YouTube, as well as everyone here in the Zoom room or who's jumping on the line even as we're getting started and live, and also those who are watching on replay. I am going to do my best to also, if I can, interact with anyone who is on the live stream. Let me see if I can, what I need to do to make that happen. Okay, so I have the Q&A or the comments section open in YouTube as well. And obviously here in the Zoom room, we're all, or if you're not familiar, I should make assumptions. If you're not familiar, the process for asking a question or sharing a reflection is just to unmute yourself. But before we get started, before we do anything else, let's gather in our circle energetically, setting everything else aside physically, emotionally, on every level, with your eyes closed, breathing in and out through the nostrils, palms to the sky, if that's comfortable for you. As always, please don't operate a motor vehicle or heavy equipment of any sort during this or any time we're together. You may have already had the experience of that not being a safe process because you were sitting there one day and you wondered, when did I go to sleep and why am I waking up now? But if you've never had that experience, it could happen at any time, even in a Q&A. And so it's best just to focus here. So if you are driving right now, please do pull off to the side of the road. Making your way energetically into the circle now, into that place that resonates most for you. Deep breath in, hold, and as you begin releasing this breath now, letting go of everything that has come before in this day, all the way out to the count of 8. And another deep breath in and hold. And as you begin releasing this breath now, letting go of everything that has come before since we last gathered just a couple of days ago, all the way out to the count of 8. And if this is your first time sitting in circle, just let go of everything that's come before since the first of the year. And another deep breath in, hold. As you begin releasing this breath now, letting go of everything that has come before since you were born, all the way out to the count of 8. Another deep breath in, hold. As you begin releasing this breath now, letting go of everything that has come before since the inception of your soul, all the way out to the count of 8. See the breath. The breath is becoming you, and you are becoming the breath. Be the breath. See the breath of the planet and all that it supports and serves. And by your breath, your connection. See the breath of the cosmos and all it supports and serves. And the light, the energy through which everything expresses. The divine is becoming you, and you are becoming the divine. For whatever remains in separation, I invite you to remove the universal plug. I'll do the same. And if you'd like to participate in the deeper transmission with your permission, let's begin. The focus for today is effectively an Ask Me Anything session. We can talk about the topics we've explored so far in the Exploring Divine Resonance series. Perhaps there are other things you'd like to explore. I've had a number of interesting emails in response to my From My Heart earlier in the week. Maybe there are things to explore there. And if you're on the YouTube simulcast right now, and you'd like to be part of the Zoom room to add your voice and perhaps even a video of you talking to the experience, though it's not required for you to turn your video on. If you want to be in the Zoom room, you can just be audio only listening even. You can register for free at exploringdivineresonance.com. And when you register, you'll get a login to my online learning platform, the Resonance Institute, and you can navigate your way to the live or this week's session tab, I think is what it's called. And you'll find the Zoom links right there for this session right now. So you could come join us in the Zoom room if you want. And I'm going to do my best to move between the Zoom room and at least check in on the comments on YouTube. I realize that those who are participating on YouTube, you might be watching a replay. And of course, I'll comment on YouTube in the comments there in response to any questions that might be asked through the replay. But if you're on the live stream, I will do my best to toggle over and respond to any questions that get asked there. So in the Zoom room, I think you all know, but if you don't, a gentle reminder, just unmute yourself and start sharing if you've got something showing up. And I'm just gonna practice going over to the YouTube. I see it here. It's on a little bit of a delay for me, but that makes sense. And no comments so far that I can see. Okay. There was a reference that I wanted to share. Maybe I'll do this to start. I posted this. Where's my keyboard? I'm gonna grab my keyboard. I posted this blog, or I sent this out on the 4th of November last year. It might be a helpful reference. I'll put it in the chat in the Zoom room, and I'll also put it in the chat over on YouTube. I think there were some questions that came in around from my heart on Wednesday, which isn't yet posted as a blog, but will be at some point. And the blog title will be "The Vaccine and Plato's Cave." That was the name of the From My Heart. Might be a helpful reminder to have a look at my Things Not Said blog in conjunction with that, if that's helpful. Anyway, it's not meant to stop a conversation about it at all. In fact, I'd love to explore anything that is coming up for you. There's an email that was sent in, and if no one picks up anything, I'll focus on the email, but I want to pause and give space for those that are here participating to ask questions.
Hi, hi, Ken.
Hi, Susan.
So I got your message to my email. So
Good.
Let's talk about the vaccine.
Let's do it. Let's have a chat. Do you want me to go through what you wrote? Would that be helpful to you, or what or do you just want to have an off-the-cuff conversation?
Well, we can have an off-the-cuff conversation, and if I missed something, we can go back to my email. I think I probably missed a couple of things while I was writing the email, because
Sure.
there were all sorts of thoughts that came up, and I don't know that I expressed them all anyway.
Perfect. Well, I'll let you lead then. They're your questions. You start wherever you'd like to start, and I'll respond.
Okay, so my discomfort had to do with, I appreciate that you have a point of view, and I certainly don't argue with it or question it, but
Did I lose you, Susan? Or did I get disconnected? Annie, you're the only camera I see right now. Are you hearing Susan? Okay. Can you hear me though? Okay. So that's unfortunate. Susan is got a frozen screen for me and I don't hear any audio. Okay. And I think you're affirming that's true, Annie. Susan, if you can hear me, I'd love for you to reconnect. Because I think everything you're saying is important. Okay, now she's hung up or been booted off. So hopefully she can come back in. Here's Susan again. Okay, good. Susan, we didn't hear anything. I was worried that that I had a technical issue, and I think I didn't, but anyway, it doesn't matter whether I did or didn't. I didn't hear anything you said other than the thing that made me uncomfortable, and then your screen froze and I heard nothing else. So
yeah,
could you start again?
I must have had a technical issue because all of a sudden I got kicked off and had to come back on, which I don't know what that means, but anyway.
I promise you, I did not kick you off.
No, I'm not accusing you. That was the last thing I thought.
I know. I'm sure that's true for you, but I want to assure anyone who's tuning in, I'm not averse at all to differences of opinion or anything like that. I think it's actually very constructive to be able to have conversation and dialogue, in particular when there's discomfort. So whether it's something that I've said or done or something that's coming up in life, I think it's really healthy to be able to explore that. So thank you for being here to explore it, Susan, and go ahead, start again if you would, please.
Well, since I wrote the email, something came up for me that I recognize. I recognize that I have an issue with being told what to do.
Okay.
Okay. So I'm very much aware of it, and I'm as an adult, I don't like. I try not to get drawn into that dynamic.
Okay.
But it doesn't invalidate my point. My point being that if I'm asking somebody who I look up to for advice about should I take the vaccine or should I not, I'm not looking for someone to tell me don't take it because blah, 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 or do take it because blah, blah, blah. Mm-hmm. I'm looking for somebody, okay, give me the pros and cons perhaps, but help me make my own decision, not tell me, advise me that you think I should do such mm-hmm. and such.
And did you perceive that that's what I was doing from my heart?
To some extent. Mm-hmm. Like, it's not like you said, everybody go out and get vaccinated, but you did say, I urge you, if you haven't been vaccinated, to do it, to get it, or I don't remember the exact wording, but
well, let me share the exact wording, because I think that's important, or at least it's important to me.
Yes, it is important, yes.
So let me just look back. I think I said, if you haven't already, please consider vaccinating yourself.
Ah, yes, that's right. That's right.
So does that sound like me saying you should go vaccinate?
No, it does not. It does not. But there is push to like you're obviously for it.
Okay, but in the interest of being clear about communicating, the fact that I don't perceive a negative spiritual or energetic impact from the vaccine, the fact that I've been vaccinated, and the fact that I invited people who haven't been to consider, does that mean you know everything else about beyond what I wrote, is my point. Like I want to have I mean, because
I hear you.
There's a lot of baggage with this question for a lot of people. I'm sure for me too, by the way. I'm not trying to hold myself outside of the circle, right? I mean, I want to slow down and process what is happening, because I noticed a couple of things, maybe in your email, but there were a number of different emails, right? Some people wrote in and said, hallelujah, this is great. A spiritual messenger on the list wrote in and said, oh my God, thank you for the courage to speak this. I'm inspired to communicate with my community now. People and other people were like, I'm unsubscribing and I'm morally offended that you would say this, and some people wrote, extensive arguments with links and all sorts of things. You need to do research, and here it is, boom, 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 right? So, and I'm not trying to diminish any of that at all, nor your perspective. I just want to have an open conversation about it. Is that fair?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
My issue is not whether somebody is for or against the vaccine.
Sure.
I appreciate everybody's got an opinion, and some
Sure.
people are on the fence. Some
Sure.
people don't know, and they're looking for somebody else to give them their
Sure.
their opinion. I appreciate all this.
Sure.
And after you reread to me your comments, it's like I'm recognizing that perhaps, like, I took it more strongly than it was. But just to give you like an example.
Sure.
No, not an example, but just to give you an incident in my life. A friend of mine was encouraged to go and see what I would call a revivalist. I don't know what he called himself, but my impression of the experience was he was like a revivalist, like Oral Roberts. He talked to God, and I don't question that he talked to God. Maybe he did. I don't know. I'm not that spiritual that I could tell if he was or wasn't. However, there was one thing he said that really hit me the wrong way. At some point in his evening of, going on and on, he says, and God wants everybody to drink 8 glasses of water.
Right. Right.
And
I'm 100% with you, by the way.
I'm going to say what?
Yeah, I'm 100% with you. In fact, am I interrupting if I jump in? I want to hear what you have to say.
Go ahead.
No, I don't want it to be like you're overwhelmed with my enthusiasm. I want to hear what you have to say. So please continue. He said this, and please share your impression and your response.
Well, I was horrified.
Sure.
I was absolutely horrified that anybody, like, the thing is, my alarm bells ring, and I'm going, God did not say this. Absolutely. So then I have to question a lot of everything else he said.
Sure.
There was another issue with him. He claimed he was non-denominational, but he kept invoking Christ. And I'm not saying that you can't invoke Christ without being non-denominational, but there were certain things he said that to me were inappropriate.
Sure.
But that's okay. I mean, I don't have to follow him. That wasn't the point. Whoever wants to follow him, you're welcome to.
Yeah. I get
it. But the big issue for me is that there are people who are looking for somebody to follow.
Sure.
And one thing I realize is that's not me. I'm not looking for someone.
Sure.
but there are all these people who don't know where to look, don't know what to think. They're looking
Sure.
for somebody out there, tell me what to do, what to think.
Right.
And it's a big responsibility for somebody who's saying, I have a higher connection, let's say, than you do, and this is what you should do. And this is a trigger for me.
Amen. By the way, it's a trigger for me too.
I can see that. I mean, when you were talking about these spiritual messengers who are telling people that the vaccine is evil, I mean, I appreciate that there are reasons not to take the vaccine. I appreciate that there is an opinion where you may feel that the vaccine is bad. I mean, certainly people have died from the vaccine, so you cannot say it's 100% effective, it's the best thing to do. It's everybody has to have their own opinion.
Of course.
So I appreciate that you were responding to these spiritual messengers who are going around saying it's evil, don't do it, you're, whatever, you'll go to hell, I don't know. I do appreciate that. It's just that last line of consider getting vaccinated, you weren't saying make up your own mind, you're saying consider getting vaccinated, which is a push in a specific direction. So that was what had me, that was why I wanted to bring it up to you. But as you say, certainly it was not, you didn't say go out and get vaccinated. You definitely did not say that.
I also didn't say God told me to tell you to get vaccinated. I didn't
appreciate that.
I did. Listen, if I ever say that, those
You'll
are my
hear from me.
I don't need to wait to hear from you, Susan. Those will be my retirement papers. That'll be the end. I am vehemently opposed to that approach. I think it's a bunch of hogwash. It's not that God doesn't talk to people. As I have said, I'm sure from some people's perspective, ad nauseum, I believe God talks to all of us individually. And even more than that, I think God whispers in our ears in different ways. And I think we can see evidence of that on so many different levels, just in innocuous ways. Although maybe this isn't innocuous, but to me, it's a fairly benign example. We have different religious traditions that presumably came out of let's say, a direct experience of God at some point. I don't know. I'm not here to try to legislate history or get into a contentious topic. I'm just saying there are different spiritual traditions. There are religious schools, traditions, religions that have different perspectives that say different things, right? And so that alone, never mind the 7+ billion people on the planet or the people gathered in this Zoom circle right now. I mean, it's not so. And furthermore, maybe I've shared this, and maybe I've only shared it in certain groups, but with some regularity, I get emails from people who say things like, God told me to tell you blah, blah, blah. And do you know what I say to them?
I'd like to know.
I email them back and I say, that's so interesting, but I'm guessing that was a message for you because God knows how to get a hold of me just fine. Peace out. I won't listen to it. I won't engage in it at all. And it's not that I don't think people have a meaningful thing to share, that I'm not interested in other perspectives. I'm intensely interested in other perspectives. It's one of the reasons why, and I'm enlivened by it. And it doesn't matter to me if we agree at all. That's not the point of a discussion. So, and I'm not saying I haven't become identified or consumed with the idea that what I'm saying isn't being heard and that I have more blah, blah, blah. But anytime those things have happened to me, either in real time or at some point later, I go, that was my noise. And oftentimes I've shared those with the community in an open email to anyone who would care to read it and posted it in a blog. For example, a year ago, I had an absolute meltdown in a private session because of something a client was saying. And I wrote a blog that said my meltdown, and I spelled it all out. I didn't try to hide from any of it. I mean, it was clearly my noise. So I hand the talking stick, not that I took it from you, but I'm much more interested in hearing what you have to say than listening to myself. I'm just trying to say I agree wholeheartedly with you. And I'm curious, did it sound, I mean, obviously it sounds to you as though the language that I was using was saying you ought to be vaccinated. Is that how it landed for you?
To some, well, there was that element that it sounded like you were saying you should. The other thing that kind of struck me was that you went through a whole explanation of the four, like Plato's in the cave chained in the, and it was like almost, well, there was a feeling that it was almost a justification for your point of view.
Interesting.
And I'm going, at the end of the day, what difference does it make at which level a person is? They're entitled to their perception and their feeling about whatever issue is being described. Well, taking the vaccine, for example. Mm-hmm. So somebody's in the cave and chained and doesn't see and feels that vaccines are bad. Well, they're entitled to that opinion.
Of course they are. Did you think I was saying otherwise?
Well, was the analogy of the four stages of the cave related to spiritual messengers specifically? That's what I wasn't sure about.
Well, I think there are, first of all, is it okay if I unpack this a little bit and try to talk about, okay. So for me, the cave allegory is another way of looking at the four stages of consciousness. And the email was not so much a response to other messengers as much as it was a increasing number of questions to me directly about my opinion and perspective on the vaccine, which have taken place in certain circles or via email. And so when I woke up on Wednesday, my instinct was not to write anything. And it wasn't in response to anything. I just thought there's nothing here for me to share. And I mean, at some level, I just thought it would be nice to not get into the space of writing from my heart today, because there's so much going on with my other writing right now. And from my heart it's not something that just comes out of me in 5 minutes. You know, it probably dominates the first part of the day, you know, with maybe there are sessions thrown in or whatever. So, and I'm saying dominate like it's a problem. I'm not trying to have a charge about it. I'm just saying I woke up, all other things being equal, I thought, oh, for the first time in months, I won't be writing it from my heart. And there's a part of me that's sort of relieved that's true, because I'm really intrigued by what's unfolding with the book around the stages of consciousness, interestingly enough. And so, I got in the shower and I thought, well, instead of, jumping to a relieved conclusion, let me just open up and say, God, is there anything here, to communicate about today? And, I started seeing things, and I started seeing, these questions, these emails and so on. And then I was like, well, that's interesting. I wonder how I could, if I were going to talk about that, how could I talk about it? And then, it was like, okay, 4 stages of consciousness. And I thought, okay, that's really interesting. But the 4 stages of consciousness, I think it's important to open a different perspective on them at this point, because I've tried to talk about them from a couple of different perspectives. And in the book, at least, there's a substantial part of a chapter, not the stages of consciousness chapter, where I go into this analysis of Plato's cave allegory and draw a parallel between the two and so on. And I thought, well, that's really interesting. And then all of a sudden my hands and feet are buzzing, and, and I'm showering, and all of a sudden it's just unfolding. Now that tends to be how I write. It's, if I'm not journaling, it's almost like I'm transcribing, a stream or something. And I'm not saying it's not my stream, or, it's not God's directive to the world or anything like that. I'm clear it's mine, and so on. And I think, as I've shared many times, I feel like the person that I'm writing for most all the time is me, not anyone else. So, anyway, by the time I got out of the shower and brushed my teeth and shaved or whatever, yeah, Wednesday was a shave day. And so I shave every other day. Person of habit, what can I say? And, I shaved and so on. And I was like, okay, well, I'm just going to go get started. I mean, the thing's already writing itself. And so that's how it opened. And as I was writing, there was this question about, I have had a reaction or a response to, and it was dismay initially a year ago. I was very, very upset about this, about the number of messengers who were out in the world promoting, to my view, conspiracies that made absolutely no sense whatsoever and were indicative of a movement towards a more constricted perceptual view. And that constricted perceptual view is very clearly outlined in Plato's cave allegory, which is not a recent bit of writing, by the way. It's been around for a long time, and it's been, interpreted extensively. But one of the things that I find interesting is that, at least in my book, I was working and I thought, well, I'm just going to go find somebody else's analysis that matches my own and either get permission or quote or whatever I need to do to stick it in the book. Because writing an analysis of the cave allegory is an arduous bit of writing, or at least it would be for me. And it's a chewy allegory to begin with, and my book's chewy and blah, blah, blah. Anyway, I couldn't find it anywhere. So I know I'm going into lots of detail here, but I'm trying to give you perspective on where I was writing from. So for me, it was, okay, I'm going to address this question, but rather than just address it yes, no, as a binary, I want to offer a context, a framework through which the reader has an opportunity to engage in their own process around this. And of course, everything I offer up is from my perceptual lens anyway. So, and I think it's important to address that this is a contentious issue up front. And I think it's really important for me to offer a thoughtful, I don't want to say balanced in the sense that I'm not interested in putting on a case for, the whole anti-vax argument. That doesn't resonate with me. And I'm unconcerned with trying to say, here are two sides of every argument. I think getting into the other side of an argument, to use the cave allegory, it's like saying, let me climb into the cave and try to think of it might be an interesting, I suppose it is interesting at some level intellectually, but I already can't be succinct, right? I'm writing these emails that are 1,200 to 2,600 words. Who the hell does that? Who even reads this? You know what I mean? Like the norm in an email that you send out to your community every week is supposed to be like 100 or 200 words. I'm already stepping on convention all over the place anyway. The last thing I need to do is get all wound up as the inner philosopher and put on a massive case for both sides of an argument. This is my own thinking. Okay. So, and when people ask me this question, they're not saying, can you give me a summary of all the pros and cons here? They're saying, what do you think? And I thought, I can share what I think, but I'd like to offer this other context through this additional lens. So anyway, that was where I was at with regard to the four stages of consciousness. That's where I was at with the cave allegory. I think the cave allegory is a really profound reference point for understanding the stages of consciousness, just my perspective on it. And I'm not sure I've ever offered it in this way from my heart. So that was my level of commitment, let's say, to these things. And I also felt like, I kind of feel like it's okay for me to push a little bit on this, because I think that there is, first of all, I've been largely silent on this question. And oftentimes silence is interpreted as consent or agreement with the dominant perspective within a certain community, right? And so as a spiritual teacher, it would be easy to assume that I'm an anti-vaxxer or that I'm whatever, you know? And I wanted to make it clear, yeah, that's not true. And I also put some things in there that I believe they had a charge for a couple of people because I heard about it in much more charged ways than you shared. One of which was, I'm really upset that you're implying that my behavior could affect anyone else.
Yeah.
And I thought, that is so fascinating. What is that a function of? Now, mind you, I'm not trying to judge anyone. I'm just trying to understand. That must be like a really deep commitment. I'm imagining, I don't know, you tell me what offended you about that, but it seems to me you'd have to be really committed to non-dualism, a strict non-dualist, to be upset about that. Otherwise, how can you deny that some behavior affects other people? I mean, unless the entire world is a mirage, right? Unless non-dualism, strict non-dualism holds, I don't get where that's an incongruent thing. And if you think that, why would you be offended by it? You just laugh at me and you'd say, here's a part of the mirage that, or whatever, this guy's clueless. He doesn't understand. Nothing affects anything. And we'd either have a discussion about it or not. Anyway.
Okay. I'm going to jump in.
Please.
I'd forgotten about that bit about where you talk about your behavior affects other people. I would suggest, and of course I can't read the other person's mind, that what they were upset about was not that you suggested their behavior affects other people, but that you're telling them that if they don't get vaccinated and maybe they're an anti-vaxxer, that they're causing harm to other people. I think that's
actually a fact. It's not even, it's potentially true. And I said that. I said, if the sustaining number of people, forget about COVID, just think about polio, right? If enough people remain unvaccinated in the world, polio sustains, right?
Well, I don't want to get into an argument about vaccines because that's another whole issue. What I did want to say was, I actually really enjoy when you go into the 4 stages. Like, I loved reading about Plato's cave. Yeah. What bothered me was that you then tied it with vaccines, because I don't feel that they fit together in that way.
Okay, so let's set aside the question of vaccines if you don't want to talk about that. That's fine.
We can. It's not that I don't want to talk about vaccines, but for me, the issue of the vaccines should not be tied to a whole dissertation of the 4 stages of consciousness.
But to me, it is. That's the issue here. It's not a question of whether the vaccine is or isn't. It's a question of how the vaccine is perceived. And if it's easier to not talk about it in terms of the vaccine, then let's use another example. Let's talk about negative entities, okay? So disembodied spirits who have a nefarious energy and goal, okay? And there are a great many people on the planet who have horrific experiences with these. And I've worked with many, many people who have had these kinds of experiences. And some of them, and I'm getting multiple mics open. Janet, I'm just going to mute you again. If you're wanting to participate in the conversation, unmute yourself, but I've got a little room noise. Oh, there we go. So let's use negative entities as the example. Okay. And the point is, if there are people, and I've worked personally with many people who have had like bite marks on their body. I remember one client, the entities were defecating in their home. Okay. Now, you might think that my approach to that person would be to say, oh, you're stuck, chained in the cave. This isn't real. But that is not at all my approach. I'm not denying the experience of the person who's being attacked by the negative entity. I'm saying that the experience of that dynamic is a function of certain artifacts of separation. The consciousness that is dominated in separation brings about a perceptual lens wherein that experience unfolds. And if it sounds like I'm blaming somebody for having bad thoughts, for having entities, that's not it at all. Not at all. I don't think the experience of being chained in the cave is a problem. It's an essential developmental step. The fact that Plato wrote about this, is, and that has sustained all this time, to me, gives it extra weight, extra gravity. It offers us a reference point that is not a function of my limited years on the planet and my limited perceptual view. It's through the lens of another that has sustained over a long period of time. Does that make sense?
Well, you've got me fascinated now. So what do you do with somebody who's got entities that are
okay,
and it's related to their
to their consciousness? So right. And this is, maybe it would have been much smarter for me to say, instead of talking about vaccines, let's not even talk about vaccines. Let's just talk about negative entities, right? Maybe that would be a way smarter way to go, because however charged negative entities are, especially if you're under attack, right? It's not as charged as the question about a vaccine. Certainly not globally, certainly not universally, right?
Yeah.
So, okay. So I want to take my time with this. I don't want to have a dissertation level engagement with you, because we have things to do and there's a limited amount of time today. On the flip side, I don't want to give you a 2-minute answer. I want to actually walk you through the steps. Is that fair?
Fair.
Okay. So we have this person who's having an experience of negative entities. And I'm saying, from my perceptual lens, and I could explain it for you, but let's just accept that this is my perceptual lens as a function of several years of studying and looking into it and exploring it and so on intuitively. This is back at the beginning for me. I came to a point where I recognized through my lens, not trying to say God told me this was true for other people. This was God's instruction for me to inform my work. Okay. Do you understand the difference, right?
Yes.
Okay. So in separation, we have negative entities. And they exist. It's not a function of, wave a magic wand and they're gone. Although we can do that in separation, we can play that game, poof. Be gone, negative entities. And guess what? They disappear. And then guess what happens?
They come back.
They come back and they come back and they come back, right? It's like saying, here's another way of saying this. And if this confuses it, I'll go back to a single example, but just by way of expanding the conversation. It's like saying in separation, we have good and evil. Right? Well, what's good? Well, these things are all good. Well, somebody else says, nope, that thing isn't good. That thing's bad. We have this struggle. It's good and evil. That discussion is only happening in the cave. It's only happening in separation.
Okay.
Okay.
I
now,
see.
Okay. Now, if you say to somebody, or if I say to somebody, let's say you're the person who's having bite and to keep it G-rated, defecation all over your house. And I say to you, oh, Susan, it's just a function of your limited consciousness. You probably swear a blue streak and hang up on me, right? And I deserve it. I deserve it. Without a doubt, I deserve it. But that's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is I understand that. I'm not denying it. You're having that experience. It's legit. I get it. And I would like to, if you're open to it, explore, share with you, not just the idea that there is a different experience available to you, but that through developmental work spiritually, you will have a different experience of yourself and the world. And in fact, at some point, with enough work, the entities will disappear. And none of the work that we're going to be doing is about poof, making the entities disappear. Because as long as we're focused on the entities, guess what happens?
They keep coming back.
This is how separation is, right? Is it not? Who said what we resist persists? Wasn't that Jung?
Yeah, I think so. Actually, yeah.
Okay, so what is that statement, and what does it mean to resist? Right. So in a state of resistance, in a resistant dynamic, what can we say about the resistant dynamic? Or what could I say to my perceptual lens? What I would say is it's a dynamic of separation. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So
I do want to leave the floor open to somebody else who wants to talk to you, but there's something I want to bring up for a later date, and the reason I'm bringing it up is because otherwise I'll forget. So maybe you'll help me remember. The other thing that came to mind reading about the I'm going back to vaccines now. The other thing that came to mind was, so you're talking about if enough people don't get vaccinated, smallpox will, I forget the word you used, but smallpox would persist. So the question that comes up to me in like taking a step back, why is it a problem that we have the pandemic? Why is it a problem that people are dying? And I'm not saying people should die, that's not my point, but in the greater scheme of things, why are we making an issue of people dying?
well, I mean, there's a certain degree of let me say this. My ear hears that as potentially many different questions, but one of them sort of dances into nihilism, to my view, right? And that's not really a question that I can answer, right? If somebody's in a nihilistic perspective, why does any of this matter? We have to find that for ourselves, right?
No, my point is not about nihilism as in we're all gonna, well, I'm not exactly sure what nihilism is, but that's not where I'm getting at. The issue, like I do have a small background in biology, and from an ecological standpoint, the disease will kill a percentage of the population. This is true of any population, be it animal or human. And
sure.
What is left will be stronger and will be will advance to be able to withstand, and the future generation will be even stronger because of it. So I'm looking from that kind of perspective. There's a lot of feeling and emotion about, I lost my parent, I lost my sibling. There's a lot of emotion involved in around death, and I'm not trying to belittle that either, but taking away the emotion, there is a healthy, there is a point of health to the sick and the weak dying, if you get what I mean.
Sure, but is that really what's going on? A, and B, right? We don't know. And B, I mean, okay, let's adopt that perspective. And some people do, right? I mean, at least one religious perspective, tradition, adopts that perspective entirely and says, we do not engage in any medicinal interaction, right? Or intervention is the word I'm looking for. So there's no Western medicine in that spiritual tradition. And so my question, rather than, let me pose a question to you, okay? So why medicine? Because isn't what you're saying true of any example? I mean, why replacement hips? Why surgeries for anything? Why? I mean, And I mean, some people believe strongly, well, the answer is no, not any of that. And some people delineate certain expressions of that, right? Some people say, well, I'll do this kind of intervention, but I won't do this kind of intervention. And I mean, the philosopher in me, and mind you, I studied philosophy as an undergraduate, but I wouldn't try to call myself a philosopher per se. I'm certainly not a professional philosopher. I don't even have my undergraduate degree, much less an advanced degree, and I'm not a professor anywhere except maybe in my own mind for myself. So just to be totally transparent about all of that, and the philosophical tradition generally is about taking examples and expanding them until there's clarity, right? So sort of exaggerating an idea, its logical expression until there's clarity. So one way to expand what you've just asked me to offer you the clarity that you seek here. I mean, I already have clarity for myself about this, but you are looking for clarity for yourself. So at what point are those interventions acceptable to you? And are they ever? And if they are in some cases and not in others, what is it about those 2 instances or those 30 instances that qualify some for intervention and others not?
I hear you. I'm just gonna, the thought that just comes to mind is that ethics does not keep up with technology. Like they come up with the medical intervention, but they don't work through the ramifications. That's an old problem.
Yeah, but I mean, I mean, what are we talking about here? Ultimately, we're talking about personal ethics, not ethics that are imposed by society. Or, I mean, you're even suggesting that if someone shares their own ethics or their own consideration, that may be an inappropriate sharing or influence. So if it's personal ethics, then how could personal ethics ever not keep up with technology? I mean, if they don't, it's because we don't take the time to think about it for ourselves and figure out the answer. It's not a problem of ethics, though. It would be my problem. You see what I mean?
Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
So if I mean, without making it into a charged thing, I would say to anyone, if you haven't figured out the answer to this question for yourself, that is not a problem with ethics. It's a problem with your unwillingness or inability to figure out the answer for yourself in a way that satisfies you. That's the challenge. But as for ethics, I mean, do you want to delegate your ethics to someone else? You're saying clearly you don't. So then it's up to you to figure that out for yourself. And to that end, I was trying to offer the 4 stages of consciousness as a framework for understanding consciousness. It's a sticky topic, though, Susan. And I mean, we can pause and open up to other people here, or other people can unmute if they want to jump into the conversation. It's possible to have more than one line open, amazingly enough, on this Zoom technology. We could have many people participating in the conversation, and that would be just fine. But the key here, to my view, is if we look at the 4 stages of consciousness as a way of castigating or judging or minimizing, it does not serve us. It doesn't serve us with each other. It doesn't serve us collectively, and it doesn't serve us individually at all. My interest in the 4 stages is not to try to find a way for you to evaluate the world and judge things. My interest in the 4 stages of consciousness is for me to understand my own behavior, my own process, to uncover that. And to the degree that I'm curious or interested or drawn into it because I'm triggered or in other ways, understand other people's behavior, but not to stick them in a box or minimize them. My fundamental belief about the human condition and experience of it is that God is alive and well in us, whether we know that or not, in every stage of consciousness. But I think to my view, and this is sort of a dangerous term because a lot of people throw this around, I think, is a way of dismissing, but to me, it's a bit of a spiritual bypass to not rigorously engage in the introspection of what these kinds of contexts offer us if they resonate with us. But if somebody said to me, Ken, do you think that your perspective on the virus is what we should, or the vaccine, or the anything is how we as a planet should be looking at this? I wouldn't just say no. I would say hell no. I would say I first of all, I recognize there are a great many people for whom my personality, the sound of my voice, whatever, the shape of my head, whatever the hell it is, doesn't resonate with them. And that's fine. I'm unconcerned with that. And I don't mean to dismiss them. I just mean I don't worry about that at all, and nor do I worry about the people who are resonating, who disagree. It's not that I'm trying to convince them to look at it differently. As I said in this email, I'm simply saying, here is my perspective. I've been asked it a number of times. I've been silent on this. I think this is a perfect opportunity for me to say something. And I know it's a sensitive topic, and I'm recognizing that up front. And listen, maybe I crossed lines and stepped on people and so on. I'm not trying to say I was perfect. I'm just saying that's the framework from which I was trying to. But some people would have that not be acceptable. And that's generally the response anytime I talk about something contentious. I'll get emails from people who say, how dare you use your influence to, and I think, well, what did you think I was doing every other week when I was sharing? I'm just sharing, all I'm doing is sharing my perspective. As I shared in the link, I offer it in service to your exploration, your process, your intimacy with God. I'm not telling you how it has to be. I'm just sharing mine in service of yours. And if it doesn't serve you, then let it go.
And that's what I was after. I wanted to understand your perspective, because whatever I heard or saw or read or whatever triggered me, it was like, okay, let me get clarification here. Let me make sure that I'm not misinterpreting what I'm reading.
Yeah. One of the things that came up, and there's interesting, people are direct messaging me, here's this, sorry I'm late, etc. Thank you all for being here. And I'll check back in on the YouTube here in a second, or maybe I could do it now since I'm thinking about it. I don't see any comments there. The point about everything is divine is that in the integrated state, we don't have the experience of the cave. It's not to say, get out of the cave. I'm in the cave as much as I need to be for myself. Who am I to tell someone else? I'm done in the cave. You should be too. And P.S., if I claim I'm done with the cave, it's a load. It's not true. I've just given you very specific examples in the last 12 months where I was triggered because somebody else was getting wound up with, how am I getting triggered? I'm not integrated. That's like saying I'm not integrated. I should get a shirt that just says, hi, my name's Ken. I'm not integrated. I could wear it to every class, or a hat. And the lack of integration to me is not a reason not to be engaged as I feel called forward. But there is a school of thought that says you shouldn't talk or share or teach until you're fully integrated. I disagree.
Wouldn't be too many teachers then.
I don't think there'd be any teachers. I think very, very few people are actually called to teach strictly from a fully integrated state. Maybe everyone is, but I can tell you this, when I've had experiences of embodied integration, I got nothing to say. What the heck is there to talk about? Now, I mean, I recognize there were teachers in history, and maybe there are teachers alive today. I have no idea. I'm not trying to judge people or say it's not possible or anything like that. I'm just saying, in a fully integrated state, unless there is a strong directive to teach or one is in a teaching dynamic already, yeah, there's, what is there to say? Just food for thought. So back to the entity person, right? The person who's having entities, they might say, you know, I'm looking for a knick-knack paddywhack solution, Ken. Give me a spell and let's move on. And I'll say, I'm not your person. That's not how this works. And the thing is, I wouldn't be surprised, and I haven't been, and I'm not, and I won't be, when the person says, no, I need a spell. Why? Because in the cave, spells are the answer, right? Who needs a healer? Does somebody who is whole need a healer? Does somebody who's whole need a magician? Do you need a spell if you are experiencing wholeness? Are you pushing against anything in wholeness? Are you triggered? You know? So, but some people are ready, right? Some people are like, yeah, I've been doing this. I'm sick and tired of the hamster wheel. And what they're talking about is the hamster wheel that is a function of consciousness. My view, my language, right? That's how I perceive it, is this hamster wheel of stage 1, stage 2, you know, disempowered, empowered, disempowered, empowered, disempowered, empowered. What else is there? Well, there's a completely different experience that's available. Well, how do I do that? Well, I've got some ideas, blah, 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 blah. But at the end of the day, my blah, blah, blah ideas are transitory and have very little value. But the experience that God expresses through me, well, I don't know. Let's have that together. And you know, you don't even have to tell me. Don't say anything. If it offers you an experience that's different than what you've had before, maybe that's something meaningful for you. And if it is, notice how when you're in that experience, which isn't about me, it's about the divine in, I believe, through my lens, blah, 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 right? All these conditional qualifiers, yada, yada, yada. From my perspective, the divine in you is being enlivened. And then just notice what happens in that space, you know? And I mean, I can give you an interpretation, but what's yours? You know, what does it mean for you? What would it mean to be sinking into that experience over and over again? And what if you were moving into an out of cave experience, but there was none of the cognitive dissonance associated with these two perceptual views? What if you were just having an experience? I mean, at some point, that experience is going to disrupt whatever cohesive narrative you have about the cave life, and you can call it whatever you want. It doesn't have to be the cave life. If that sounds diminishing or condescending, call it the good life. It doesn't matter, you know? Call it the best life. Call it the most amazing blah, 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 cotton candy falling from the sky, driving, you know, Lamborghini, living in a mansion on the hill, whatever. It doesn't matter. But if it's different than that, and the physics, the dynamics, the cosmology of that experience, well, what would that mean? And what if you had more experience of it? And maybe even the answer doesn't matter. Maybe it's just about exploring that however you will.
Ken.
Yeah.
Hey, this is a fascinating discussion, so I thought I'd kind of jump in on it.
Giddy up, man. I don't know what's up with all this thumbs up. My 16-year-old's wearing off on me. She gives me thumbs up all the time. And today I find myself doing this a lot. So shout out to Riley Ann, my 16-year-old daughter, who gives me thumbs up a lot. And now I'm stuck giving you all thumbs up.
That's Sorry. Okay. I've been stuck
I'm clearly not 60. Maeve gives a thumbs up.
I think we've all gotten it.
Go ahead, Brian. I'm sorry.
So my perspective, and I shared this, I think, the other day on your email, was, you know, I understood the Plato's Cave was a direct correlation to why so many spiritual leaders have kind of gone off the rail with the conspiracy theories. And taken polarized stances on whether you should get the vaccine or not. That's how I read it.
Sure.
How you utilized that perspective in there. I realized when I first opened the email that I read it from my perspective is, and this isn't to argue with anyone else's perspective, but from mine, your email seemed to me very non-confrontational, very direct. I know others didn't, because it occurred to me when I read it, I could see how other people might, take it in certain ways, but that was my perspective, and that's how I saw the Plato's Cave correlation, not only tied directly into the different stages of consciousness, but how I saw it. How I saw where you were going with it was that you were offering explanation as to why so many spiritual leaders sort of, were so really good for us before in terms of how they were in their evolution, how they sort of kind of went back down the ladder, opposite what they were teaching and whatnot. That was my kind of perspective on what you've written.
I want you to be able to keep talking here, Brian, but I want to put this in. And I also put myself in that group because I said really clearly, I have been triggered.
Yes.
So this is not me sitting atop the mountain saying these over here, well, shame, or these over here, hurrah. It's here's how to understand this for ourselves. If it offers value, that's the key with me is, I think it must be boring as all sin to get, let me say that differently. I can imagine it would be very agitating if I had massive disclaimers at the beginning of every email, but the bottom line is the link I shared is the perma disclaimer. If it serves you, great. If it doesn't, let it go. It's just, anyway, go ahead, keep going.
It is, and I remember that too, because I remember when you had told us in emails last year about the breakdown. I remember when you had first alluded in your emails that you were dismayed and upset about the conspiracy theories and the spiritual teachers. So I remember the triggers and stuff, but it's stuff like that that makes you human and relatable too, that vulnerability, because there are some spiritual teachers out there, whether they've gone backwards or forward, that basically they'll tell you how they went through the fire, but now everything's hunky-dory and they're like Superman from here on out. No kryptonite, no nothing. They'll tell you, oh yeah, I was drunk in a gutter and my life hit a low and stuff, but now it's all been peaches and cream from here on in. And it's hard to relate to those people.
Again, I want to do a timeout, Brian, because I just want to keep putting myself in the group of people who are out there, right? So I just want to gently destroy any idea that I'm any different than anyone else. And here it is. For years, I used my surrender on June 30th, 2011 to illustrate surrender, but I didn't talk about what I was surrendering in real time. So it was a sanitized version of surrender. In August of 2011, I thought I was going to be homeless. But that was resolved. It's much easier to talk about these things once they're resolved than to offer real-time commentary on what's unfolding. And I have done that as well. Keep going, Brian. I just don't want to be, I am just like everyone else. And I keep wanting to point that out.
Oh, yes. And I understand that. That's where I was
Okay.
going. Is you allow that vulnerability and that stuff like that. And that's what makes you relatable. That's one of the reasons why I follow you. People that aren't vulnerable and can't relate those stuff, it's harder to relate to them. That makes sense. It's harder to see them as human. You see them as above you and something you can never attain. You know what I'm saying?
I do. And I know you have already acknowledged this, and I just keep thinking about all the years and days and months and decades of my life when I was concerned about projecting perfection, and still am even today. So it's, I keep interrupting you, Brian.
No, it relates perfectly. I mean, heck, I do the same thing. A lot of people don't know the struggles I go through. I don't talk about it openly with everybody. Some people think life's great and it's not. definitely concern ourselves with that. I found it interesting what you had said about people, talking, contact you and saying, hey, I got a message from God and stuff like that. Cause I remember back in the wintertime, usually in the wintertime, I go up to see my family once a year, but because of the COVID stuff, I was torn as to whether I should do it or not. And then my mom had actually contacted me and said, hey, I got kind of this message for you and whatever. And she related it and it made sense and it fit in perfectly because I was so confused and torn. They weren't getting through anyways. But then when she sent subsequent emails, it became more apparent that those weren't from spirit. Those were more from her ego and her own fear. I could tell the difference. So it was kind of interesting. And then you had mentioned the entity thing. That's kind of fascinating too, because I had come in contact with someone that had been under attack from an entity, and I knew these things existed. I didn't know to what extent, and found it fascinating. I attempted to help the person, but ended up eventually having to sever ties with them because they wanted out, but they couldn't get out, and they truly, talking to them, didn't want out of the situation. And what you said was true. When you focus on the entity, it keeps coming back, and it just kept getting stronger and stronger until it essentially just consumed their lives. But I found the whole thing kind of fascinating, and certainly I wasn't in any real position to help them. And you do what you can, but you quickly realize you're out of your depth in something like that.
I appreciate your sharing, Brian.
Not a problem.
I don't want to cut you short, and I see Clint's got his hand up. He's following the instant teleseminar protocol. Raise your hand if you have a question next. Oh, Brian muted up. Clint, go ahead, man. Something coming up for you?
Well, the reason I raised my hand is because I don't have any real social instincts, and I can't jump in like everybody else does. So
I understand.
I have to wait to be recognized.
I totally get it, man. Yes. Go ahead, Clint. What's coming up for you?
Right, while we're talking about controversial subjects.
Yeah, you can bring something else up.
Yeah, something pretty fundamental.
Good.
I have trouble with the concept of oneness, and I just don't see the connection with what people call separateness leading to oneness. And I'm attempting to see it from the other side, try to figure out why everybody but me says it's this experience is a oneness experience. But it just, every time I listen to somebody or go through somebody else's material, it just comes down to, well, it just is. Even the highly articulate Bernardo Castro, he comes up with all kinds of proofs that he associates with his belief, but still it comes down to he's making the assumption it just is, and then using things that I see in a different way to prove his point. So can you give me a reason that separation leads to oneness and not just connectedness?
Can you ask the question differently, Clint?
Maybe, but that's really how I see it.
No, I'm not asking you to change your perspective. I'm just asking you if you can say it differently. I'm not sure I quite get what you're asking yet.
Well,
let me clarify something. Is it okay if I clarify?
Yeah.
Okay. So I'm hearing you say that connectedness and oneness, to your view, are different.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Do you want to try to explain that?
Okay.
And do you mean connectedness with the divine and oneness with the divine? Is that what you mean?
Yeah, essentially. I don't quite use the word divine, but
okay. What word do you use?
None. Actually, I haven't come up with anything that really works well.
Okay.
I'm sure you're familiar with Kessler's hold-on theory, that Wilbur reiterates a lot.
I mean, I'm vaguely familiar with it,
Okay.
but not intimately at all. You've written me about it.
Yeah.
So the challenge, let me see if I can't work to what I perceive, or when I open up to what I think you're seeing. Let me see if I can articulate it to you and see if this resonates with you. The connection is not the same as oneness, because oneness does not contain an element of separation. Is that what you're saying?
Hmm.
And if there is no separation, where is personal identity?
Eventually, that's where it gets to. Yeah.
Okay.
But I just don't see that seeing separation and then seeing connectedness automatically leads to this concept of one thing. I mean, let's take a forest. A forest has, and let's just say that this is a forest of nothing but trees. And we can even narrow it down to one species of tree.
Okay.
Because there are one species of tree in this forest.
Yeah, I get it. Yeah. Does it mean
The
all the trees
trees,
are one tree?
yeah, it doesn't
Yeah.
mean all the trees are one tree. It means
Yeah.
that trees make up a forest. There are
Yeah.
a whole on of trees that make up a new entity that's a little bit
Yeah.
more comprehensive than they are, but
Yeah.
they are not a single tree.
Right.
Even a grove of aspen trees that are currently defined as
One
a
tree.
single organism
Right.
are only a single organism by the definition that they share the same DNA.
Yeah.
But
I
when you actually
see. Yeah.
look at it, each little tree in that connected root system has its own identity, own chemical identity, and it recognizes the other chemical identities of the trees around it.
Yeah.
So I don't see how separation and connectedness necessitates one.
I see what you're asking. It seems to me that it's a perceptual view question, which probably never gets resolved in the context of what you're speaking from. And I think the lack of resolution there, for me, borders on the divine mystery, but I can appreciate that that would be an unfulfilling and unsatisfying answer. How's that for a direct answer?
It's honestly what I expected.
I've been limited by what you perceived. Yeah.
Well, I have no problem shifting to this perspective that the universe is one entity, and it can be perceived as that. I mean, the human body was perceived as one thing until we start figuring out that we've got organs inside us and bones inside us. So, you know, it's easy enough to shift the perspective, but it seems that so many people just use it as the only perspective.
I don't
And
think
to me, that seems wrong.
Yeah, I don't think it's the only perspective. I mean, I think that that perspective is, first of all, let's imagine that you and I are capable of having a identical experience of integration. What I mean by that is that our two central nervous systems are equally integrated. And let's just say, whatever this would mean, if somebody measured it, it would be 100%. Ta-da! It's 100%. And let's say that all the other things that are not as easily measurable are all the same as well. Still, you've lived your life and I've lived mine. And it's my perception that even if we could guarantee that, still you and I would have two different perceptual experiences of whatever. And that I might interpret that as one whole for which I am not concurrently completely aware of. And for you, my lack of concurrent awareness would indicate, I'm just saying what if, Clint, I'm not trying to project it on you, but you might interpret that as necessitating a description that is other than one whole. And at that point, it seems to me that the description of it is the limitation. And the way that I've handled that, which might be a source of, it might be a cliche from your perspective and also a source of agitation or disappointment. The way I've handled that in the past, it comes up often on retreat, especially during in-person retreats, but also in this virtual retreat series I've been doing over the last year, where the limitation is not the experience, but the language. And the language itself, it seems to me, is always stuck in the perceptual lens of separation fundamentally. And so if our requirement is that we have the same language to describe something, we will forever be something that's integrated, never mind what is integrated and what that means. We would forever be chasing our tail, because the words, even if we can get to a place where the words mean the same thing, which that seems improbable to me, but even if we could do that, the fact that we think we need to have words to describe it has us still looking through the doorway rather than being on the other side of the doorway in the experience without a reason to speak of it. Anyway, the way I handle it is I call it orange peels on the floor, which I suppose one could accuse me of a spiritual bypass for saying that.
What does it matter? Yeah.
Well, what I mean is that if you're looking at it from your lens and I'm looking at it from my lens, even if we're having the same exact experience, our inability to agree is irrelevant. It's not the agreement that matters. It's the experience of it that matters. And on that front, it's your experience for you and my experience for me.
Okay.
But I mean, people are motivated to have common language references for lots of different reasons, and your motivations may be very different than others. You may be looking for that as a way of establishing a coherent way of sharing or exploring in some meaningful way. And it just seems to me that the limitations of language are persistent, but I wouldn't try to dissuade you from your pursuits. Not that I could anyway, I'm sure.
No, I doubt you could, but I'm trying to figure out the perspective of the other side, I guess you'd say it. It's to me, it just seems like it's an ancient paradigm that honestly, I've received some guidance that says we're supposed to be growing out of it.
Great.
And there's so many people that are just stuck in this thing of one, 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 and there is no self. There is only one self, and we are only illusionary selves. And wait a minute, no, that's not what I'm seeing. Come on.
Well, look, all I can say is, hallelujah for your perceptual experience and more power to you, man. Give voice and step out in the world and share. It's, I think one of the challenges is that, like in my case, I can't begin to defend, or especially not people that I haven't read or understand or know, but even if I did, I'm stuck in my own perceptual experience. I don't perceive that I'm stuck in an ancient tradition in the sense that I'm not aware of what the ancient tradition would be. I'm trying to describe my experience without concern for tradition. I felt very limited in the religious tradition of my youth, and so I left it behind in my youth. But I'm unconcerned with trying to match or fit with anyone. I actually don't really care whether what I say matches what anyone else says. So
Yeah.
I feel freed of those kinds of constraints, and I'm not educated, at least not traditionally, in any tradition or any of it. So I don't, in some ways, I feel sort of free of some of the things that you perceive in the industry. On the flip side, I'm sure there are plenty of biases and so on that I don't think I'm stuck with, and they're
Yeah.
so ingrained into who I am because of the place on the planet I grew up, or whatever whatever those things are that influence how we perceive stuff, that to claim that I'm not confined is maybe absurd. I don't know.
Well, that's why I asked you, because I do perceive that you are attempting to not be influenced by ancient teachings, but
Well,
my sense of the energy is that it's become a resonance that is easy to uh, uh, attune to.
yeah, that makes sense. I will tell you this, Clint, and maybe this will make sense to you, and maybe it won't. I have had some, to some degree, sustaining, not like months and not 360 degrees of life, but in some sustained embodied ways. And I think you know what I mean when I say that.
Mhm.
I've had experiences of embodied union, and they're very different than what I thought they would be. They're very, very different than what I thought they would be. And one aspect of the experience for me has been, so far, maybe it changes, maybe it's entirely different, I don't know, is that I can, if I bring my focus to any particular thing, I can become deeply aware of that thing. And
Mhm.
because it feels like I'm moving around in the same space, it feels as one. But as for the singularity of it, it's both a yes and a no, if you understand what I mean.
Exactly.
It's singular in the sense that the perception, I don't even know what the language would be here, Clint. The perceptual interface experience, blah, 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 is congruent, expansive,
Mhm.
but the awareness is, at least so far, distinct. So, the best example that's simple that I can give you is, we go into a garden. The whole thing's a garden, but there are lots of different plants and trees and so on, and different kinds of butterflies and blah, blah, blah. And in embodied union, the garden doesn't become a speck of flower. It's that I have equal access to the entirety of the garden, but
Mhm.
not all at once.
Why not?
I don't know. What I mean is concurrently, I don't have access to the entire garden. So if in my
Okay.
awareness, I want to go look at this, I instantly have awareness of that, but I don't have, I take my attention to it. Whereas many people seem to think that
Yeah.
in embodied union, you would be entirely omniscient, fully integrated in an omniscient state. I imagine that's true of whatever your substitute for the divine or the nothing is, but I am not the entirety of the nothing. I am an aspect of the nothing, and I feel like I have access to the entirety of the nothing, but not concurrently, not in its entirety now. And
Okay.
maybe that's a function of my lack of integration, or, you know, many other things. I don't know.
It's a function of singular awareness. Yeah, you're describing my experiences exactly.
No.
And I just don't understand why it's a sensation of oneness to people and not to me. But if you can have enough subdivisions in your mind, you can experience everything at once. You can
Sure.
experience more than one thing at once.
Sure, of
I
course.
do this constantly
Sure.
while I'm working.
Of course.
So I don't understand if you have those experiences of oneness in the future, try to differentiate yourself and see how much you can.
Well, I already am differentiated because I'm experiencing.
No, I'm
So,
talking about.
you mean differentiate the experience dynamic? Yes, I've done that as well.
Okay,
Yes.
and you've experienced more than one thing at a time.
Of course.
You can take your attention to
Yeah.
2 different things, or
Sure.
10, or what, 50.
Yeah. Okay, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we're on the
I mean, I
same
have that
page.
experience. Yeah, I have that experience all the time. I don't even feel like I need to have an experience of embodied union to be having that experience.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
Okay. So
Is
we're
this
on the
helpful
same
to you?
page. We're on the same. Yes, because
Yeah. I hear it in your voice.
I grew up with this kind of stuff being heavily suppressed,
Yeah.
and nobody to talk to, having these crazy experiences, and still nobody to talk to, because nobody talks about what their experiences are like. They just call it oneness or union, or, you know,
Oh man.
and there's
I'm
nothing that I can relate to. And I don't
well,
call it oneness and union. I call it everythingness, allness. And yes, there's a God out there, but he's separate from me. I've actually encountered him a couple times. And, you know, but this thing about no self and the ego death and all that crazy stuff, I mean, just why?
it doesn't resonate with me either, Clint. I don't think the ego dies, but anyway.
No, the ego just needs to be healthy and mature.
Sure. The way I refer to that is integrated.
Yeah.
But I have no idea what other people, I mean, I'm thinking of and I just want to acknowledge, Tracy, I know your hand's up, or it was up, and I promise I'll unmute here in a second. Or Angelica is there, you're there, where
We can end. We've covered
no,
it.
I'm not, I just wanted to acknowledge that I'm reminded of my conversation with Keating, which by far the most integrated person I've ever encountered. And I mean, it's very difficult to even articulate now. And it's been, this August will be 4 years. So, but I understand what you're saying. And I mean, obviously I'm willing to talk about the experience. It's just very difficult to say, but I can hear what's enlivened in you, and that's great. Hallelujah, Clint. I'm glad you're here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I just had a comment to that. Question, is that the experience between the unmanifested and the manifested, where that experience sits? The feeling of that, not as a word thing, but as a
I don't know, because for me, it doesn't organize itself in that way. But I suppose I could try to organize it in that way and then say something about it. I've never tried to differentiate unmanifested or manifest. So in my experience, they're not different. They're just all the same. But I don't know if I'm speaking to your question, Angelica. I love the brain twister going on here. It's wonderful.
I don't know if you haven't don't look at it that way, then it's probably difficult to figure that out.
I think I probably could, but the thing is that I don't.
I mean, that's a whole. It's a whole.
Yeah.
So
that's the part that's hard for me. What I hear you say is between.
Yeah, between is not. It is if you think of a figure 8, which is open at the middle. Where the 2 lines cross.
I can see how that could be said. Yes.
I don't know. It has a different name when you look at that. I mean that configuration, but I forgot it.
Yeah.
But if there's the inside also goes to the outside. I mean, you take a strip, Mobius strip.
Mobius strip. Yeah. Yep. Yeah. Well, let me ask you, is that your experience of it?
I think my experience is in the unmanifested, but I'm not embodied enough to see it in any other way. So I can't. I'm trying to move to the middle part where I would be more out to one end.
Beautiful. It's a great conversation. Some of what comes up for me, Angelica, is it's a little bit, it's like this, but it's not at all like this. If I'm working with somebody, either in the context of a group or individually, and they want to be validated in their experience of separation, I feel like I have to drop a lens over my visor so I can see what they're talking about, but I don't normally see it, if that makes sense. Okay, I'm going to say it makes sense. Unless you unmute again. Tracy, your hand has gone up and down and you've been unbelievably patient. What's going on for you? Do you have anything you want to give voice to or share or ask about?
I think Angelica was unmuting for a final comment. I wanted to let her.
Okay. I'm sorry. I missed that. I apologize.
I just want to say thank you.
Oh, yeah. Thank you. You're welcome. Thank you for being here. Everyone, thank you.
And Ken, I'm wondering about, do you want to check the commentary on YouTube?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Oh, you're so good, Tracy.
I'll mute again until you do that.
No one's saying anything on YouTube. Who knows? Maybe there's nobody even there. That's hilarious. There's no question. Everything that's going on is here. Tracy. Thank you for asking me. Go ahead. What's coming up for you?
I'm exploring from a perspective of stage 3, my best understanding and experience with it to date is all I can really speak from.
Mm-hmm.
So if in the context, and I'll attempt to be really broad and stay out of story. So there are events unfolding, I'm in a body on a particular planet. There are events unfolding in the collective out in the world that I live in and a part of. And within the collective, there's a lot of different viewpoints and experiences and expressions and ways of managing and coping with, you know, an event. Some subsets are even denying that an event's happening, saying it's not even happening. So from stage 3, I'm observing all of this and saying, okay, because this is unfolding in the world around me, and in some ways it's starting to poke into my life and my experience, whether I like it or not, this points to some inner dynamic, some unresolved things within me. So I'm going to go within and explore deeper within. What is all of this saying to me? What is all of this reflecting that's actually inside of me? And then as I'm engaging in that experience and allowing the integration and the triggering that's just happening, you know, I'm not making it happen, it's just occurring because of what's unfolding. I'm also at the same time, from that perspective, from where I am in my stage of consciousness, saying, okay, I have to go within to discern what my next steps are in every moment of every day. And those steps might continue to change and my viewpoints might continue to change. So, you know, I can't control what anybody else does, nor am I trying to. I'm saying what's right for me. Okay, what's right for me is to do X, Y, Z about what is happening in the world I live in while I'm in form. And these people are choosing this. And so I discern, okay, well, I don't have to engage with those people, and it's not resonant for me to engage with those people. So I'm going to stay out of their experience because that's what my inner guidance is telling me. So this is sort of how from stage 3, and you may have a different perspective about other aspects of it, where stage 3, how stage 3 is engaging. Then for stage 4, which I can say I'm not in stage 4, I'm just surmising that stage 4 is I am. And from stage 4, I am is all of it. I am is there is a pathogen and I am a pathogen. I am is also, I am the quantum antiparticle of that pathogen. So I am cannot be touched or harmed. It can experience all of it and not be harmed. It just, I am. So nothing, no harm can befall in any way if you're functioning and living fully from stage 4. That's my best guess.
And are you wanting commentary or just
yeah, if you
witness?
have a perspective that differs from that, I'm exploring it from those stages of consciousness out of curiosity and for deeper understanding for myself and
yeah. I mean, it's really interesting to hear you give voice to this. And it seems to me that your awareness, your understanding, and your ability to articulate it are all coming to deeper and deeper kind of resonance. I hear you giving voice in these really powerful ways. You know, there are a few things that I wonder if they resonate, or I wonder how this fits for you, or if you are having this experience at all. One of the things that I perceive about 3 is that there is nothing other than. So an example of that is there's nothing other than the divine. And it's not an idea. It is the expression of that. And so if something, or when, in my case, when something stirs up, triggers, and this seems absolutely congruent with what you just said or what I heard you say, I perceive that as some aspect of my unintegrated self that is integrating one of the practices that I started a number of years ago that I will embarrassingly tell you I thought I was going to iron out in the course of 5 days. When I went up to the monastery I go up to every summer, I went up and I thought, for these 5 days, I'm now going to come to an experience of loving everyone as much as I love God. And the first part of that was I'm going to love everyone I've ever encountered or have any experience of as much as I love God. Boy, was that a challenge. That took a long time, number of years, and I'm not, maybe it's still not there. But anyway, on this particular trip, I decided I was gonna see if I could explore that. And the reason it makes me giggle, if it's not obvious, Tracy, is that this is still unfolding. You know, there's still such a richness there. But I guess the key underpinning there is that everything, everyone, and everything is an undistorted expression of divinity. It doesn't mean how it's actually expressing is undistorted. It means that underneath everything else is the undistorted expression of divinity. And if I'm perceiving the noise, it's noise in me. But there's an exception to that, which is so difficult to articulate. It must be part of the opening into stage 4, but maybe it's not. I don't know. Anyway, it goes to things related to the sort of soul contract level. And as for the experience of 4, I'm the pathogen and I'm the antigen. That's very interesting. I'll have to take some time to explore that. That had never.
One perspective I heard expressed by another, someone I would call a leader in consciousness, it was last year, is that idea, and I don't know where it came from, but it really caught my attention, and I've been sitting with it, is that if you have a pathogen that's introduced into this environment, there is naturally a quantum antiparticle that goes with it, but somehow the antiparticle got suppressed. So that's why you have what's unfolding. And that's because we're in a distortion and we're in an illusion and separation. And so my thought is, okay, so if we were all in union, the two things would emerge and be harmonized together. But that's not where we are as a collective. So it was just an interesting, concept.
It's an interesting concept. I don't know that it resonates for me, but it's an interesting concept.
My sense is it points to something that I maybe don't fully understand. The fact that it continues to bubble up in my consciousness says it may not be exactly correct, and yet it still points to something that I can keep exploring in the depths of my being.
Yeah. One of the potential risks of it, I mean, I'm just hearing you say this and I'm trying to understand what's going on for me. One of the potential risks that I perceive, but I mean, literally it's real time for me. So I don't know how to spell this out differently, is that there's a projection from what one imagines perfection is. And there's no room for unknown. And that dynamic sounds like stage 2 to me, not stage 4. And I know there are a great many people who rebel against the idea that there is anything unknown in stage 4. And, you know, they're either right or they're not. And I don't know which it is.
My best guess is that stage 4 is unknown. It's both. It's the unknown and the known both. And I don't get how that works, but that's because I'm not in stage 4.
Yeah, I mean, I don't, the idea that there's no, there's no pathogen is, it just doesn't, it seems like an idealized expression of what one imagines perfection would be. And I don't know. I mean, this is interesting because Clint's comment is coming in my mind here, you know, the divine perfection unknowable because it doesn't fit. Maybe that's just a spiritual bypass. It doesn't seem so to me, but just because it doesn't seem so doesn't mean it's true. And just because I think it sounds like stage 2 doesn't mean it is. So it's very interesting, Tracy. I appreciate you bringing it forward. You always bring a thoughtful and insightful perspective and presence. And I'm certainly grateful for that.
Thanks, Clint.
Thank you. Well, I know we've gotten wound up about all sorts of different things here, and I'm happy to get wound up. I mean, gotten into, you know, climbed into the conversation. I don't mean that that's a problem at all. And if there are other things that are coming up and you're sitting here and you're thinking, I wonder if I should bring that up, bring it up. I may need to, you know what I'm going to do? Here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to turn my camera off for a second, mute the line, and just go use the restroom because I drank a lot of water earlier and I need a break, and I'm realizing there's a little bit of physical discomfort for me, and it's difficult for me to be present if I have physical discomfort like that. So I'm going to pee. I'll be right back. And while we're having this little break, you sit with whether or not there's something you want to explore. And if there's nothing else to explore, we'll close our time together. And if there is, we'll keep exploring. I'll be right back. Take me, I don't know, a minute, 2 minutes, something like that. I'll be right back.
So thank you. It's very nice listening to you all. I really appreciate everybody showing up.
Okay. Anything else coming up before we wrap up for today? It's speak now or wait for the next time.
Hello.
Hello.
Hello. I was just thinking about how incredible this conversation has been, taking us on all kinds of detours and distractions. Really enjoyed this conversation. And I've just been sitting here thinking, wow, the level of insight and ability to articulate things by Clint and Tracy and Angelica and Susan. I'm just like, wow, these incredible beings that I'm in presence with is making me feel rather, I'm not sure what the word is, but it's helping me to grow. I just went and made a cup of tea while I was thinking about this. And in the conversation that you were having with us on Wednesday, you gave the example of falling in love and the different levels of what that is. Level 1, reading about it. Level 2, your friends talking about it. And level 3, experiencing it from the level of being. And I just I just wonder about this thing, because this is the one that trips me up in life. And I know it's a big topic. And I just wonder if you want to, I don't know, give some voice to that, because the idea of falling in love implies falling, for one, and then being in love. And I like to think of us all being in love in some way. But there's this thing that I think trips people up all over the place with the concept of having this one person, and it could be like a series of that one person, to be in that experience of being in love with. So I thought I'd just throw that in there.
I love it, Maeve. I'm glad to hear your voice again, and your reflection on the group is wonderful. And of course, you're in the group and part of that wonderment. So, yeah, falling. Maybe that relates to the process of not being in control. What do you think of that?
I agree. I think there is a sense of, you know, when you are, or when I am in that presence with somebody who I get that strong sense of, this is the person. And there's such a strong resonance, a strong recognition, and a real feeling of the most incredible connection that I've ever had, like ever, in my whole entire life, in this embodiment, in this physical being, if that's even making any sense. That there is this sense of, I don't want to lose control. I need to control. But the whole point of it is that you give yourself over to a certain degree to being fully in that experience, fully present to yourself and the other person in the moment, whether it lasts a day, a month, a year, or a lifetime. And I think I've been reading this book, so just to kind of try and get some clarity on the whole thing around the journey of the soul. And I don't even know where it is. It's here somewhere. But anyway, I really shouldn't digress, because then I lose my point. Sorry.
It's okay, to your point. And we've been digressing for the last 2 hours.
I love
why should
it.
we stop now?
Now. Oh man, it's such a good book. And it just, here it is. It's The Care of the Soul by Thomas More. And I've lost the thread of what I was going to say, because I got so focused on trying to find the book. But anyway, it's good to be here.
I'm glad you're here. If you're willing to stay with it, I want to pick up some things and explore them with you. Are you
Mhm.
open to that?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. So you said there's an instinct to control. Do you think that comes before the falling or after the falling, or both?
Good question. I think it comes either side,
But not in the falling.
not in the falling.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
Brilliant. And another thing you asked about was that there's one person.
Hmm.
Can you say more about that?
There's this idea in general in the world of romantic relationship that there is this one person everybody seems to be chasing or searching for. And over time, we eventually discover that the one person is the self.
Right.
But we're like,
you are the one you were
oh,
seeking.
crap. I thought there was going to be this one person that was going to be it for me.
They're going to fix it all. They're going to come with spackle and they're going to fill in all these little holes and they're going to fix me.
Yeah. And of course, when you meet that person, and it could, and like I say, it could be a series of people, because it's like some people are, they manage to have a marriage or a relationship that does last their lifetime, and there are those of us who have not had that experience, and in eventual discovery, there's this realization and experience that through those encounters, and then the breakdowns and the breakups and the recovery and the those tower moments of absolute crumble, and then looking deep within and healing, and real self-realization, and going within and trying to figure out what went wrong, and who am I in all of this, and why can't I, and asking all the questions, and then eventually getting to that place of, well, I'm here, I'm still here physically, and eventually picking up the pieces mentally, emotionally, and spiritually. But then there are the one person that we are given the impression of through Hollywood media, all the rest of it, that there's this boy meets girl. Sometimes they don't get on at the beginning, but then by the end of the film they're walking away in the sunset and happy ever after and all that stuff. So we're given this story from childhood that that's how it should be. And so when we discover that that's not how it actually is, that disappointment jars with us. Well, I'll say for me, I won't speak for everybody. And so the idea of having that one person, and when the breakup happens or the relationship ends or someone dies or whatever it is, you go, oh, well, if that was my one person, then have I no other choices? Have I no other options? But but that's what I'm exploring and discovering, that relationship with myself that I bring it back to. But then I go, yeah, but then I want a companion to spend my life,
Sure.
to have these inward, outward, meandering conversations. And then I discover your group and I go, oh,
we can be in love here.
there we go. So yeah, thank you.
I want to ask another question, if I could, Maeve.
Go for it.
What would it mean to be in love all the time? What does that mean to you?
I was walking down the road the other day with a friend, and there was this little robin on the top of a tree. I don't know if it's a male or female robin. So I was a boy robin, and he was chirping away. And then way, way, way over in the distance, like we couldn't see this other bird, was responding. And this robin gave to me the impression that this robin was just completely in love. Like not worrying about what anyone thought of how it sounded or what it looked like, or needed to even be next to someone, because it was totally by itself. And for me, that was a moment of in love. So yeah, and I have moments of it. I don't know if Maybe it is for some people completely 24/7. Good question. Have I answered it?
Brilliantly. Hmm. Brilliantly. What else is coming up for you, Maeve?
Distance.
Did you say distance?
I did.
Say more.
Well, from hearing everybody's voice, I'm assuming that we are all miles away from each other.
Mm.
And I'm in the UK. And I'm pretty sure nobody in this circle is in any of the houses next to me.
Mm.
And I know someone, I think it was Clint, was talking about oneness and separation. And so this idea of separation has been coming up for me quite a bit recently. And, you know, there's oceans between us, there's countries between us, and there's also ideas and perspectives of life that separate us, I suppose.
Mm-hmm.
And so this whole thing of, you know, we're on one planet. There's one, I think, one being, call it energy, source, God, divine, one love, you know, all these things that are what I believe unite us. But depending on who we are, where we've come from in this lifetime and previous lifetimes, we may see things similarly, differently.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, there is that. There could be an ocean between us. We could be together, but physically we're separated.
Mm.
And then there's this idea of, as you think of someone, you're there with them. And there's that metaphysical experience of connectedness, regardless of time and space and
Mm-hmm.
distance and all of that. You ask good questions.
It's interesting because when I close my eyes, I am undistracted by any of all of this. And I'm right with you.
Mm-hmm.
It's one of the reasons I was so resistant to doing Zoom for all those years. In addition to my own discomfort to having a camera on me, which I now don't care about, but it took a while to accept. Primarily because I close my eyes anyway, because I don't want to, I'm not interested in mugging for the camera. It takes energy for me. It's energy I don't want to expend. I'd much rather be present. And I realize there's something to presence visually, but at least for me, the voice is an opening to a more complete encounter.
Mm-hmm.
which then doesn't even require noise, doesn't require voice or sound at all, and somehow is both inside in the interior, but also recognizes your expression, your individuation, your separate expression. And I also have the advantage, I think that's true with anyone for me, but with you, I have the advantage of having been with you in person.
Mhm.
So, whatever that was, 9 years ago.
I was recounting that to a friend a few days ago.
Yeah. What else is coming up for you, Maeve?
Peace.
Is there anything to say about that?
Feels like an experience that for a very long time I didn't have. And it was this elusive idea. And it sometimes feels like it's a word that's thrown around, like love. It's a word that's thrown around and used so much. But what does it really mean? What does it really feel like? Can we really experience it in this world? And then sometimes it feels like it's so simple.
And right now, how does it feel?
Robin. I just think of that Robin. Expansive. Warm. Friendly.
Anything else coming up to give voice to or reflect on?
There's something there because something just happened in my throat. So.
Mhm.
There are many things. And a big question that's coming up is, what is life?
Mhm.
What is life? Why are we here? What is really, really going on? And especially your email that you were discussing earlier,
Mhm.
I thought was very brave. And the Plato's cave connection to what's happening. Where am I in that? And who's in the cave with me? Dare I venture out? Dare I speak my truth? What is my truth? There's a lot of noise, and it's nice to have this space. Thank you for creating it.
I don't want to dismiss the acknowledgement at all. I appreciate what you're saying, and I wonder if this would make sense to you. I'm being who I am.
Mm.
So from my perspective, what I want to say is thank you to you and everyone in the circle for being here. Because this is a chance to be who I am with you. And maybe this makes sense on some level. I can't imagine really anything more meaningful and fulfilling than being who I am with others, with this group. And having lived a large part of my life not doing that, it's a grand relief. And it sustains and enlivens and draws me further into the mystery of divine presence. Anything coming up around the meaning of life and so on that you want to give voice to?
It has to be something. It's a discovery.
Mm.
Discovery of who I am.
Mm.
And not because of what someone's told me
Mhm.
or society dictates.
Mhm. Where did you discover that liberation, that freedom?
At the bottom of the garden when I was about 5. But then it got a lid put on it. And then it was suppressed.
Mm.
So at this stage in my life, I've been moving that lid bit by bit
Mm.
to reconnect with that.
Did someone give you permission, or did you figure it out for yourself?
I've had lots of help over the years.
Mm.
And lots of people in my life who've come and gone. Some remain. Some who have challenged me in good ways and in seemingly not so good ways
Mm.
to help me to stand up for myself,
Mm.
find my voice,
Mm.
find my sense of who I really am.
Mm.
I haven't done any of this on my own.
That's a beautiful acknowledgement and recognition of the role of others. What about your role?
I think my role has been to keep going
Mm.
and keep bouncing back up. Not necessarily bouncing, but getting back up.
Mm-hmm. And what have you learned so far?
Hmm?
What have you learned so far?
That's such a good question. I've learned so many things and I've learned nothing. Still learning.
What lesson are you learning right now?
The lesson I'm learning right now is how to open up.
Say that again.
Mm.
I missed what you said. May I say again?
How to open up.
How to open up.
Mm-hmm.
Mm.
To myself, to the divine, to others,
Mm-hmm.
to not have this, I'm so strong, persona,
Mm.
that it's okay to be vulnerable, that it's okay to share from a place of insecurity and anxiety, and just speak about it and not be worried about what that feels like to others, or just be it. That I don't have to be the strong one.
Sounds like love.
It does, doesn't it?
It does. Sounds like the robin.
Maybe I found the one.
That's good, Maeve. That's really good. That is really, really good. Brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. Maybe you have. Maybe so. Anything else you'd like to share or give voice to today?
Feels complete.
Beautiful. Thank you for your presence, for sharing your voice, your perspective, and so much more, your wisdom. It's wonderful to be with you, Maeve.
It's wonderful to be with you too. Thank you for hearing me.
I'm grateful for the opportunity to be who I am with you. Beautiful. Thank you, Maeve. What a beautiful place to bring our time together today to a close. Such an honor to sit with you and explore with and without words. When you're ready, I invite you to begin returning the universal plug. I'll do the same as I bring this transmission to a close. with deep, deep gratitude for the conversation that has unfolded with words, and also the conversation that has unfolded in silence, under the words, between the words, and in the space where there are no words, yet somehow communication continues. Until we're together again very soon. Peace.